Truthfully, despite all the good things I'd heard about Frieren, after typing it into Google Images, hang on. Come on guys. Truthfully, I took one look at the characters and went, nah, not for me. Boy, was I wrong. I don't use this website, myanimelist, at all. Nor do I put much stock in just ratings alone, but something crazy has happened. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood has, quite deservedly, held its #1 spot for a very long time. But I saw a tweet noting that not only has that changed, as I'm scrolling through here, you've probably noticed how close together the top 20 are, being just 0.01 or 0.02 apart. Frieren sits at a giant 0.25 star lead. Now, I know there's a bit of a trend of seasonal anime rising to the top, and then as the recency bias goes away, it falls back down. But it's been nearly a year since the first episode and nearly 6 months since its last episode, which is enough time for most, certainly not all, but a good chunk of the recency bias to have gone, and it still sits at the top of this list and still appears very frequently in my comment section. So I finally gave it a go, and I'm not going to recap the entire show, but just to kind of give an overview for anyone who's not seen it yet, I'm going to go through the first 2 episodes quickly, and you'll see why I say 2 episodes specifically. So the first couple episodes focus on the 4 heroes who have defeated the Demon King, who we still know nothing about, but that's a point I'll come back to. However, based on the reaction of everyone, and also just the name, you know, Demon King is pretty scary sounding, it's very obvious the group of Himmel the hero, Eisen the warrior, Peter the priest, and of course, Frieren the mage, have all done something incredible here. They're welcomed back as heroes, and then once the festivities end, the group watch the Era Shower, which comes every 50 years, as they reflect on their 10-year journey and vow to meet up again in 50 years' time. Of course, as you might be expecting, besides the elf Frieren, who can live for thousands of years, and the dwarf Eisen, who has a pretty solid lifespan too, the 2 humans she travelled with have aged significantly by the time they meet up again, and are now nearing the end of their lives. And one thing that's made quite clear in this first episode, initially anyway, is that those 10 years meant a lot more to the trio than it did to Frieren. Obviously, 10 years sounds like a long time to you and me, but to Frieren it was such a small phase of a very long life that she didn't think much of it. However, she'll soon realise that decade meant a lot more to her than she realised, that she kind of took it for granted, as she breaks down in tears of regret at Himmel's funeral that she didn't get to know him better, likely regretting the 50 years she decided to just go elsewhere as well. And so she begins to become much more appreciative of the present moment. And this is probably my favourite theme in Frieren, and one I will definitely make a separate video on. Because whilst you might be thinking, okay, yeah, it's a short portion of your lifespan, but why does that mean you wouldn't appreciate it? Well, I could say the same to you with regard to every day or week. And this is just one of the many realizations that this show gave me. Anyway, separate video for that. The first episode ends with the trio that are still alive splitting up, then Frieren returning to visit Heiter, and him asking her to take on Fern, a young girl whose life he saved, on as an apprentice. Frieren does not want to, so instead he asks her if she wouldn't mind translating a grimoire for him, which will take a few years to do, but again, that's no big deal to Frieren. And while she's translating it, if she wouldn't mind doing some training with Fern alongside that. Then, moving ahead to the second episode, we see her training up Fern a bit as Heiter passes away, along with some flashbacks to her travels with Himmel and the others. We also see the lasting impact the group had on the world as they go past the village they previously saved, and as such, built a statue of Himmel. And this is something the series really loves to do and does very well, drawing these parallels between Frieren's current party and her previous one. However, to be perfectly honest once again, at this point, I truthfully wasn't particularly grabbed by the show. I felt as though I was supposed to feel really sad about these characters passing on, but we really didn't know anything about them. They'd basically just been introduced, we saw some basic elements of their personality and their connection to Frieren, and then they passed on. Personally, I didn't feel like it gave us enough time to really connect to the characters enough to be upset that they're at the end of their lives. And yes, I'm aware of the irony here. However, from what I've seen, I'm in the minority on this. A lot of people did feel a connection to these characters already at this point, so maybe that's just me. Regardless, I think I watched the next 2 episodes or so, and then actually kind of stopped watching for a while. I won't show the series I ended up watching instead because of the comments I'd receive if I did. Anyway, I took a break from watching, so I had to go back to those first 4 episodes to remind myself of what happened, and they're definitely even better the second time around. You can really see the care and the thought the writers put into this series, but at the time, I just decided it wasn't for me. It was cool seeing Frieren learn from her past regrets, the two trained together, and the way they started to build up and explain the way magic works in the world, but it just didn't grab me. Now, I already know what the comments are going to say, and yes, I am your kind of typical shonen fan, with most of my favourite series being things like Haikyuu, JoJo, Attack on Titan. Outside of that kind of man punch big man or man scores sports point vibe, my favourites would probably be these 3 here: Berserk, Vinland Saga, and Kaiji, which yes, I know these 2 in particular don't stray too far from the shonen path. The point being, Frieren just didn't feel like my kind of thing at first. And whilst I honestly don't see an issue with just not vibing with a series and deciding to watch something you're more interested in, I'm sure some people out there will see that as some sort of crime and let me know about it. Regardless, with the amount of comments I got requesting a video on it, seeing its position as the #1 rated anime of all time, along with never really disliking it in the first place, I decided to give it another go, and I am certainly glad I did. The next dozen episodes or so don't really have an overarching plot, but instead have this almost slice of life feel as you go from one side quest as such to another. And it's packed full of these really beautiful little lessons and moments that I can tell would require a real deep look to fully appreciate, from Stark overcoming his doubts to my personal favourite, Sign moving past his regret. There's a lot of really great little character stories. As the story goes on, I found them growing on me more and more, and enjoying the series and its beautiful little messages more and more. More than anything, the series felt like a real reminder to simply appreciate all the little moments in life that are normally taken for granted. There's also the very interesting perspective of how Frieren sees the world due to her exceedingly long lifespan. And it has this very clever way of these otherworldly circumstances making you reflect on your own. Throughout the story, we never actually see the fight against the Demon King, nor do the members of the party really speak much of it. Instead, what they speak about are those small moments along the way. That was the best part of the journey to them. And we also see through flashbacks that Himmel would go on all these little detours which were kind of confusing to the rest of the group at the time, because, you know, they need to hurry up and beat the Demon King. But he realizes that they were gonna make it there anyway. So if there's little detours that they want to take along the way, and that they would enjoy doing so, even if it takes a little longer, why not reach the end goal and enjoy the journey? Again, this whole idea deserves a separate video, but just to give anyone who's not seen it an idea of the themes in here. It really is a beautiful series that does so much so well. Even the kind of romance subplot between Stark and Fern feels very organic and not forced at all. The two start as complete strangers who clearly have no idea how to act towards each other and gradually become more and more comfortable as the series progresses. Usually it feels like a lot of romance subplots are just kind of in there for the sake of it, or almost out of obligation. You know, here's a male main character and a female side character, of course they're gonna like each other. But they handle this extremely well in Frieren. very much showing rather than telling. So rather than an annoying part of the series, it becomes quite a charming one. That's not to say I think the series is without flaws completely, which I'm going to give a disclaimer here. I found that when you say a series is anything less than 100% perfect, sometimes the fans of that series take it as some sort of personal attack and send me emails threatening to dox me because I said I liked MHA, but the pacing was a bit slow near the end. You've probably noticed there's this quite tribal mindset when it comes to anime online, so I won't lie, I was half tempted not to include this part because I just knew the video would perform so much better if I didn't. But this channel would quickly become very soulless if I started doing things like that, and hopefully everyone here is mature enough to understand that I can really like a series and still point out minor faults with it. Besides, most of these faults I wouldn't actually call faults and are mostly just personal preference. For instance, the humor never really got me. People seem to love the whole Frieren and the mimics thing. I just never really got what the joke was, to be honest. But obviously humor is a very subjective thing. And also, to be clear, this is not me saying I have some sort of elite sense of humor that Frieren isn't good enough for. The series I found funniest was probably JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, so if anything it's quite the opposite, and maybe my sense of humor is just too stupid for the show. Nice! It certainly wasn't cringe or annoying, it just didn't really make me laugh. Besides this one guy who visited Stark in his training, I found him pretty funny. The other criticism I have, which I can see is partly me expecting the show to be something it isn't, but I do also think is fairly valid. I think the fights could have been a lot more interesting than they were, which is going to cause a real reaction in the comments because visually they were beautiful, absolutely incredible looking, and very well animated. But I always felt like they were the weakest part of the show. Just something felt missing from the early fights in particular for me. Again, I know this is partly personal preference. I love the kind of using little details of the power system to try and get an advantage over the other type fights. And whilst the show definitely does start to build up the power system as the series progresses, I still don't find it massively interesting at the moment, to be honest. Anyway, the point I had is that some of the fights are kind of just, yeah, I'm stronger, so I win, without anything too creative or interesting happening. Most of these are quite minor fights, so it's usually fine, but there's a couple I had a bit of an issue with. So for instance, the fight, if you can call it that, between Aura and Frieren. Before the two face off, as well as her being built up as this monstrous mage, we're told that Aura's technique basically allows her to weigh her mana against the opponent. If she has more, she can control her opponent, and vice versa. So it's very much high risk, high reward. However, because of her gigantic amount of mana, she always ends up winning. Now, there's often fights and whatnot in series where you kind of know are going to go a certain way, right? But they're still interesting because, one, the series keeps that slight doubt in the back of your mind of whether or not they'll actually win or lose. And two, you're still left to wonder and see how it's going to happen. But it's pretty obvious from the moment we know about Aura's technique that Frieren is going to win because she has more mana, even if they try to act as though she doesn't. And so I kind of just felt like I was waiting a couple episodes for it to be revealed that, yeah, Frieren has more mana than her. And so the whole seeing her train to conceal her amount of mana, whilst there was some quite interesting backstory with her master, a lot of it really just felt to me like I wanted them to move past it so I could get back to the journey and the strength of the series in its beautiful character writing. But yeah, the fights definitely do get better later on, and obviously this isn't a shonen or battle manga. The fights aren't supposed to be, you know, Jujutsu Kaisen levels of complicated power systems, and it wouldn't really suit the series if they were, but I do think there's room for a bit more creativity in them that are not really using at the moment. Anyway, that was obviously a very nitpicky criticism, and as mentioned, the later fights in the series are moving in the right direction with regards to that. So again, to reiterate, a very minor criticism from me, which no doubt someone in the comments will blow way out of proportion. And again, just to reiterate, none of those remotely enough to offset the quality of the series as a whole. This is a really beautiful series. It is a little slow paced to begin with, but it really does grow with you as it goes on, and it was a very refreshing change from my usual watch. It's one of those shows like Mob Psycho or Vinland Saga or Full Metal Alchemist where there really isn't much to criticize beyond the most minor nitpicky points. It does a lot very, very well and does a fantastic job of being what it's supposed to be. Even if someone who isn't usually into a series like this, I think it's phenomenal. So definitely check it out. I've got a few more videos on this series I'm planning to release following this, unless this video only gets like 500 views or something, and maybe not. But anyway, thanks for watching and see you again soon.